Hello and welcome to the Game Day Podcast from talkSPORT with me, Sam Matterface, talkSPORT's football correspondent, Alex Crook, and the European football expert, the guru, Kevin Hatchard. Coming up, Liverpool leave it late to edge out Spurs in a clash at Anfield, which was an absolute thriller. It was bonkers, to be honest with you. But there was big controversy as well. Manchester City returned to the top of the Premier League with a victory at Fulham. Bournemouth all but safe after thrashing hapless Leeds. Plus, 4 more midweek fixtures from the Premier League to look forward to. It's all on the Game Day Podcast from talkSPORT. Hello, Crookie, you all right?
I'm good.
You feeling comfortable today? You feel comfortable. You're in the Matterface basement.
I'm a little bit too close to you. I'm feeling a little bit claustrophobic.
That's because you take up quite a lot of room.
We'll get past that.
Kev, you okay?
I'm heartened by this romantic scene I can see in front of me. Delightful stuff.
There's always room for one more, Kev. Not much room, but there is. Well, there's always room for one more.
It's a lovely invitation. I'll take that under advisement. Yes. Yes. Thrilled after that Liverpool game. One of the craziest games I've ever commentated on in my life. It was extraordinary.
It was brilliant, and we'll get to it in just a second. But you were at Old Trafford, weren't you, yesterday for a protest? You obviously went just to protest, I take it.
Well, I went to cover the protest for your show. I felt as chief football correspondent I should be there. And I've got to say, I thought they were really well organised. I was talking to a policeman before the fans arrived, and he said, we're actually liaising with the fans. They want to get down the Munich tunnel to the director's box, and we're going to facilitate that. I thought that was quite a refreshing approach, really, because there's obviously been a lot at government level about the right to protest, but it was peaceful, but they got their point across, and I agree with them. You know, Sir Jim Ratcliffe is supposed to be a Manchester United fan. If you watch this podcast, Sir Jim, and you are truly a Manchester United fan, then you will know that coming into the football club and allowing Joel and Avram Glazer to retain some of their shares is not a very good idea and makes you actually not really a Manchester United fan.
Interesting, isn't it? Because that's really the main sort of thrust of the process, right? It's full sale only. It's making sure the Glazers are out of the club. The Manchester United fans see this as a process to get rid of the Glazers. That wasn't the plan when the Glazers put the club up for sale and had this full review, though.
No, well, I think both of us have always been quite sceptical during the process as to whether they intend to sell any of their shares, because it has been suggested to me that it could just be a massive fishing expedition, find out how much the football club is worth now. A bit like if you're maybe thinking about selling your house, then you hold on to it in a few years down the line, you hope it goes up in price again. I think the Sir Jim Ratcliffe bid would be appealing to the Glazers because it kind of ticks both boxes. There's 6 siblings. Joel and Avram want to stay in situ. The other 4 siblings don't. And I think if Sir Jim Ratcliffe comes in, he's basically going to buy out those 4. So let's see what happens. We should know a lot more this week, but the United fans were pretty clear. They want full sale only. I think they would rather the Qataris at this stage.
So Jim Ratcliffe becomes 4 Glazers.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a good way of looking at it.
Okay, let's get to the best of the weekend's action, starting off at Anfield.
It would have been some story. Richarlison equalising for Tottenham in front of the Tottenham fans. Diogo Jota, the substitute, slots it into the bottom right-hand corner. Liverpool 4, Tottenham 3, one of the games of the season.
I felt like we was the better team overall in terms of creating opportunities, but to give the opposition goals, it makes it impossible to win games of football.
It was more an even game than it should have been, but fine. And you should not concede. But then was the situation. Again, credit to Tottenham. The team who's 3-1 down starts believing even more. The team who played super and is 3-1 up starts doubting a little bit, and all of a sudden the game is open.
Kevin, you commentated the game for talkSPORT International. It was absolutely mental, this match. And the most Spursy thing imaginable, to get themselves level in stoppage time, see Richarlison rip off his shirt and bulge his rippling muscles in front of the Tottenham fans, and then give Liverpool a goal straight afterwards. It's absolutely crackers, isn't it? It was bonkers.
It was wonderful, but what it was an illustration of why neither team's going to make top 4, because Liverpool were unbelievably good in that first quarter of an hour, ripped Tottenham to shreds, but couldn't maintain that intensity. And I know that Jurgen Klopp talked about, well, you know, we didn't understand the situation properly at 3-0 up. We weren't serious enough about it. But actually, I wonder if it's a physical thing as well, because that opening quarter of an hour was all about intensity, all about getting in Tottenham's faces, and they just couldn't maintain that. So I think that's why Liverpool have struggled, gave away cheap goals. And then you look at Tottenham, how, just a week after going 5-0 down in 21 minutes at Newcastle, how can you be that abject in the first quarter of an hour? You know what Anfield's like. You know what Liverpool are like. And it was borderline a dereliction of duty. But to give them credit, they did manage to dig in and find a way back into the game. But Harry Kane looked absolutely bemused by the whole thing. And his interview afterwards, I thought, was very telling. Just seems completely baffled by why they keep making such atrocious starts.
Well, because ultimately the truth is that the players aren't of the requisite quality to challenge for top honours, are they? I mean, that's the truth of the matter. I mean, the thing is when you are Ryan Mason, you're trying desperately to make your mark. Okay, so you're trying to sort of reset the PR narrative. I don't know if you saw his programme notes the other night. I was at the Manchester United game, and he wrote these sort of almost like love letters to Tottenham Hotspur in his programme notes. I know what it means to represent this shirt. And he's sort of trying to convey this idea that after the Conte and the Stellini era, where no one seemed to give a damn about Tottenham and actually only cared about winning and furthering their own agendas, he was there to reset it and say, no, I really care. Because Stellini seemed to have about as much passion as a corpse, didn't he? I mean, Christ. So Ryan's obviously trying to do that. And when he speaks from the heart. But that's not enough. You know, you need quality, you need organisation. And they weren't organised. You know, 3 of them pressing from the front, and then no one pressing Fabinho. It doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely crazy. So they do need a reset. They do need a reorganisation, not just in the PR terms, but also in football terms as well.
Yeah, I think if you're only there on a short-term basis, at the very least, if you're a Tottenham fan, you want to see improvements in performance. I would argue that has happened. You know, they came back from 2-0 down to get a point against United. They nearly came back from 3 down to get a point
they conceded
against
5
Liverpool.
goals.
Yeah, defensively,
previous to both of those
but
times.
Defensively, they're a shambles. But what they didn't do at Anfield yesterday, even at 3-0 down, they didn't wave the white flag like they did at St James's Park. So that tells me that at least the players are playing for Ryan Mason. Clearly they weren't for Stellini. I don't think they were for Antonio Conte at the end either. But just on Liverpool, Kev said this is why they won't finish in the top 4. I've looked at Liverpool's fixtures because I'm a little bit of a nervous Manchester United fan.
He's panicking.
Well, they've got 5 very winnable games, Kev. That would see them on 71 points, I think, come the end of the season, if they win all 5. And I think there's every chance they can do that. So United probably still need another 7 points just to make sure they keep Liverpool at arm's length. I think United will do that, but I think Liverpool have given themselves a chance.
They have, but I think it is an illustration of why things haven't quite been right. Liverpool are capable of blowing any team away. We know that. We saw that with Manchester United the other week.
We don't talk about that. No need to bring that up.
But every need. But I do think that lack of intensity, that lack of consistency across the 90 minutes we've seen time and time again. And so, you know, I think it's about building towards next season. Just on the Tottenham side of things, I do want to talk about Romero because I'm just not convinced at all. Like, we constantly hear how good a defender he is, but this hard man tribute act is just a joke. Like,
the foul for the penalty was awful.
Exactly.
Since the World Cup, he's been sent off twice and booked about 12 times.
Yeah, that is not a world-class defender. He's won the World Cup. You can't take that away from him. He had a decent track record in Serie A, no question about that. There is a really good defender in there, but until he reins in these ridiculous instincts, he's not going to be an elite player. And I know people will say, well, he already is. He's won the World Cup. But if he wants to be top level, he has to behave effectively, and he seems incapable of doing that.
We were watching Match of the Day last night, and we were picking out certain things about Tottenham and rewinding it, looking at the defence.
You were. I was trying to stay awake.
Yeah, you were. You were struggling, weren't you, last night?
I was, yeah.
And then there was a chance where Tottenham have an opportunity, and Romero is diving in at the far post. And I just looked at Crook and went, but why is he there?
Yeah,
why,
the one that hit the post.
Why is he the furthest one forward? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly what we said in commentary. What was he doing there?
There's no tactical plan if that's your outlet. Do you know what I mean? I know he does like to go on this sort of rampaging run forward every now and again, but that can't happen all the time. They're so lopsided as a defence. That obviously is going to cause you problems. They're not organised enough for him to do that. I'm sorry, that's not the case. Jurgen Klopp's got a real issue with Paul Tierney. He admitted afterwards that he's not his biggest fan. This is what he said.
the problem is, I have to mention because you don't speak about it. So Paul Tierney gave us in a game, in a season where it was quite important, he didn't give Harry Kane a red card. And I love Harry Kane. What a player. Today again, my God, he's pretty much unplayable. That day, didn't get a red card. But Robbo got a red card. So in this game, we drew 2-2. You might remember it. And it was not the first time. There's so many things. It's just little ones, and it's just not. Nobody in the stadium wanted a foul in the situation with Mo Salah. The linesman was completely calm, both hands down, and he whistled it. And of course we are emotional in these moments. It's difficult. It's not okay. We should not do that. Yes, we are role models, all clear. But we are human beings first and foremost. Before you are a role model, you are a human being, and that happens anymore. But I didn't say a bad word to the fourth official, not at all, and he wouldn't have deserved it anyway because he didn't do anything wrong. But it turned around to the fourth official, celebrated in that direction, and pulled my hamstring probably in that moment. So fair enough, all good. I'm already punished, got a yellow card on top of that. I think he thought I should have got a different punishment, but because the fourth official was a yellow card, that's it. We have to ask Mr. Tierney, what's in this situation? What's going on?
We should talk about Jurgen Klopp, right? Because when the fourth goal goes in, he gets right in the face of the fourth official, which was unnecessary and probably deserved greater punishment, didn't it, Kev?
Yeah, I think he let himself down, to be honest, and I think the stuff about Paul Tierney wasn't great either. I think you won't find a bigger fan of Klopp than me, as you guys know, but I do think there are moments where sometimes he lets himself down. And I think on this occasion, if he has a problem with Paul Tierney, that's taking that up with the authorities. I think we're in a situation at the moment with referees where it's as important as it ever was to try and make that profession attractive. That doesn't mean we don't criticise referees. It doesn't mean we don't flag it when they make mistakes, of course. But I think running up to a fourth official and getting in his face after a goal is a terrible, terrible look, because it does set a bad example. And whether they like it or not, Premier League managers, and certainly guys like Klopp, who are in the top handful of coaches in the world, they set the tone, they set the example. So I love Klopp, you guys know that, but I think on Sunday really let himself down.
I think he was an embarrassment, Jurgen Klopp. He embarrassed the football club, he embarrassed himself. And this suggestion that Tierney has in some way got it in for Liverpool, I hate that when football clubs claim that referees have agendas against them. They may not be very good at times, referees, but I don't believe that any of them are biased against any football club or any manager. I think Jurgen Klopp, when he looks at himself this morning in the mirror, when he looks back at his interviews, I think he'll be quite ashamed.
Yeah, I mean, they don't care that much about those football clubs, honestly. They've got a job to do. They're more worried about what their assessor is going to say about their performance rather than what Jurgen Klopp is going to say about their performance. But Paul Tierney did miss a couple of big decisions, I think. He should have sent off Jurgen Klopp for that tirade in the front of in confronting the fourth official and pulling his hamstring. I mean, that's definitely a sending off offence. And Oliver Skipp should have been sent off, and Diogo Jota should have been sent off. I mean, the Diogo Jota one is the most blatant red card that I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think the Skipp one as well. And I said it on the boot room on Sunday night. I think sometimes it does come down to reputation. Certainly in the case of Jota, not that type of player. That's Casemiro who makes that tackle.
Oh, here we go.
I tell you 100% that's a red card. It's a red card.
Is it the Glazers' fault?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, what was interesting, in commentary, I referenced that. Do you remember the Antoine Griezmann one against Liverpool, I think, in the Champions League, and had the high foot and he got sent off? Jota's not meant to do him. He's not trying to kick him in the face, but he has kicked him in the face.
The law is endangering the opponent.
Yeah, 100%.
And he's got a massive cut on his head. He needs stitches.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a red card. There isn't even any doubt about it. I don't understand the speculation. I think the Oliver Skipp one maybe is a little bit more dubious, but I still think it's a red card. As soon as I saw it, I was like, red card.
I'm sure it's very similar to a tackle that Casemiro was sent off for earlier in the season.
Chris Perry was my co-com for the Oliver Skipp, and I said it looks like an ugly challenge. His argument was, and I think a lot of players would make this argument, once you've made that challenge, where can you put your foot? So I agree. I can see why that could have been a red card, 100%. However, I think players are having to try to change how they tackle, because if you look at years gone by, that kind of challenge would have gone through and we probably wouldn't have even spoken about
but
it.
that's an argument about the law, isn't it? Rather than the application of it.
Is.
I mean, the truth is,
It is.
under the current law, that is a red card.
Yes.
Because even though, and there will be someone who's shouting at the screener, but he got the ball. That is not a defence in law. Hasn't been a defence in law for 20 years.
Yeah.
The fact is that he goes over, after he's touched, minuscule touch on the ball, he then goes over and plants his foot on the ankle. Now, you can say, where else can he put his foot? There's quite a few places he could have put his foot, to be honest with you.
I think we also both felt that the challenge on Richarlison was a penalty. So actually, that's 4 major decisions.
So the Konate one, right? Okay, when he grabs him round the waist and he pulls him down at the end of the game, I think that's a penalty. And also, if Richarlison doesn't score in the last minute before Spurs give the game away, Darwin Núñez has tried to inflict some randomly mental challenge on him as well. So when the two of them go for the ball from the free kick, Darwin Núñez, instead of trying to head the ball, goes with his feet, sort of karate style, and almost takes off Richarlison's head. So even if Richarlison doesn't make contact with the ball and it doesn't go in, that's going to be a penalty.
Yeah, well, he panicked, didn't he? Because I think he realised Richarlison got in behind him and he's panicking and desperately trying to get back there. But it's quite an unorthodox way of trying to clear the ball. Nearly cleared his head instead.
Yes, it was a very strange sort of end to the game. Anyway, look, I think Paul Tierney's performance wasn't brilliant, wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I think there's a lot of decisions there that probably should have been dealt with. And actually, Liverpool were lucky not to lose Diogo Jota for at least the game. Lucas Moura, look, I think many Spurs fans thought that the red card against Everton was the last time they'd ever actually see him. But that wonderful pass for Diogo Jota certainly will live long in his legacy.
Still got it.
I think he prefer his legacy to be that night in Amsterdam.
It's a long time ago now.
Now I feel sorry for him. Listen, I mean, he knows he's not going to be part of the future. We did the story on talkSPORT a week or so ago that he'll be leaving at the end of the season. I think with that in mind, it's a little bit strange that he's still being used, really. Once you've decided you're moving on from a particular player, you probably don't want to use him in such a high-pressure game. And maybe his head's a bit frazzled, maybe his confidence is a bit low. It was an inexplicable decision, and ultimately it's cost Tottenham the game. Harry
Kane level now with Wayne Rooney on 208 Premier League goals, but not that really means much to him this morning as he wakes up and thinks, we've thrown away another 3 points. Let's move on to Fulham against Manchester City. Manchester City back on top of the table. There's only been 3 nights in the last 170 that Manchester City have occupied that place, but they're back on top now. And ahead of Arsenal against Chelsea, which is coming up live on talkSPORT on Tuesday night, they've laid their marker down. They weren't terrific in this game, but I suppose being back on top of the table sends a message to the rest of the league now, doesn't it? They're taking control, Kev.
Yeah, they are. And I think what this game showed, and you're right, they weren't at their best. And I thought Fulham, it's quite interesting. Marco Silva was quite angry, wasn't he, about the idea that his players were on the beach and that they were kind of cruising towards the end of the season. Well, I think they've really
he clearly doesn't like the beach.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't. Kind of sand gets everywhere. But I think the last few games have shown they're not. I think that performance at Everton, that I think a lot of people just assumed, I was one of them, that Fulham, not that much motivation, Everton would win that game. And Fulham really showed up in that game. And they really showed up here. And I think, Manchester City have world-class strikers. We talk about Haaland all the time. Alvarez is wildly good. Wildly good. So intelligent, so technically gifted. The winning goal is outrageous. So there's a kid who's already won the World Cup. And I think he's just going to get better and better and better. And to have those two is a real luxury.
So we were talking about this last night as well, which was Haaland's getting 50 goals, right? Okay. And everyone's like, wow, this guy is amazing. Alvarez plays about a tenth of the minutes. He's got 15 goals. Yeah. And we were discussing how there's loads of clubs that really need a number 9, a goal getter, someone to put the ball in the back of the net. And Manchester City have gone out and got 2 in one summer. And both of them can do amazing things. I mean, that second goal was an absolute peach of a goal. I mean, that's obviously sort of like a big thumbs up to the recruitment team at Manchester City, but also just highlights, I think, the needs in other places. Chelsea, for example, is one of them. I mean, even Tottenham, they've got Harry Kane, but they don't really seem to have another goal scorer where you need that alternative. You need someone else who's going to push the other guy, but also step into his shoes if he's not around.
Yeah, and obviously he's a young player, but he looks happy, doesn't he, at Manchester City? He's happy knowing that he's not going to start week in, week out, but he's happy to be part of this incredible team under an incredible coach, even if it is often as understudy.
He'd be a bit of an
Haaland.
odd guy if he wasn't happy about winning the World Cup and the treble in about 6 months.
That's true. That's true. But do you know what? I do think if you look at him, it was a good player before the World Cup, but I think being part of that Argentinian side has just made him grow in stature, and he feels like he belongs now at the very top level. I think kudos to Manchester City because they're more than capable of blowing teams away, as they did against Arsenal in midweek. But if you're going to win a title, particularly when you're trying to balance a very congested fixture list, it's often more about tight games away from home against good sides, and Fulham have proved to be a good side this season, getting the job done, grinding it out. And I think they're going to have to do that a few occasions between now and the end of the season. And clearly they've got that in their locker.
I want to ask you, Kev, if there's anybody on the continent who sort of people are looking at as potential sort of acquisitions for the summer in terms of those number 9s, those goal getters. How many of them really are around? Because there isn't a huge amount, is there? I mean, everyone sort of comes up with the same name. Harry Kane may be available and Victor Osimhen of Napoli. But apart from that, no one's really talking about anybody else.
No, there aren't many. I mean, you look at Gonzalo Ramos. I think he at Benfica, he's one that gets talked about a lot. The Osimhen one's really interesting because Premier League clubs, I'm sure, will be in that race. There's no doubt about that. But there's a really interesting twist here. BeIN need a number 9. They are prepared to pay the money, and his girlfriend is German and wants to go back to Germany. Now, that's being widely reported in German media, that is a driving force behind what he might do. Now, of course, things can change really quickly, but I do think he's not nailed on to go to the Premier League. He'd be perfect for the Premier League, but he's not nailed on to go there. I think there are a lot of clubs interested in him, but don't be surprised if Gonzalo Ramos goes this summer. We know Benfica sell their family silver. Yeah. They're happy to do that. They'll have the next Gonzalo Ramos stowed away somewhere. So I think that's
already on the boat from South America somewhere.
Yeah,
he's just like, they'll let him out just as they sell Ramos.
There's going to be a domino effect, isn't there? If Osimhen does pitch up at Bayern Munich, clearly they're not going to sign Harry Kane as well in the same summer. So that probably opens the door for Manchester United. I did a piece in the Transfer Notebook this week that Chelsea under Pochettino would want to be part of that conversation. You're a Chelsea fan. Scott Minto shot it down. I think the only English club really that Harry Kane can join this summer are Manchester United, unless Newcastle do decide to take the shackles off and do something crazy. But suggestions coming out of the northeast are that won't happen. Who's the lad at Salzburg, Kev, as well, that's been watched
Benjamin
quite a lot by English
Šeško.
clubs?
Well, Benjamin Šeško's already going to Leipzig. That's nailed on. So that's already been sorted.
How did they do that deal? That's strange, isn't it?
Well, it's very unusual. Salzburg and Leipzig don't tend to do much business together, so it's very unusual.
In Tottenham of the continent, aren't they?
One interesting point on Chelsea, by the way. Christopher Nkunku made his first start for a long time, for a couple of months actually, and looked really sharp at the weekend. Scored the only goal against Hoffenheim.
Where did he play?
He played in attack, played with Werner, and I think that's his best position. He can play a lot of different positions, but I genuinely
he can play wide,
see
can't
him.
he?
Yeah, he started wide, really, as a wide forward, and got loads of assists. And then Jesse Marsch was the one, for all his sins, he was the one who said, "No, you're a centre forward." So they started playing him up top, and he got loads of goals, and he's scored goals ever since.
Okay, well, I mean, that deal apparently is done. So let's see what happens if he does pitch up at Stamford.
Poch will love him.
Yeah.
Well, everyone will love him if he scores goals. I mean, in fact, if he scores one goal, that would be great right now. Fulham should have had a penalty for a Walker foul on Reed, I think. Let's turn to Manchester United. Crook continuing his one-man protest of never buying a ticket, but still occasionally going to Manchester United. How was it, the experience? You were upset about one particular thing, weren't you?
They ran out of pies at half time. Yeah, they did.
Is that because you ate them all?
I left myself open to that. No, but I mean that is unforgivable, really. You know,
I had one at half time.
Yeah, I had to settle for a cheese and onion pasty.
I got a Manchester United pie. The Manchester United pie is the best pie.
That's what I wanted. Yeah.
Okay, so it's got it's got steak, it's got chili, it's got a bit of gravy in it, it's got a bit of spice. It's nice, isn't it? Right?
Well, I
He
wouldn't
wanted
know
one.
after yesterday.
Well, you do. You've had
Yeah.
it before.
Yeah.
He wanted one. He didn't get one. He was very upset. When he got back here last night, he was like, I only had a cheese and onion pie. It was not the same. Not the same. It's not the same.
It's like
Yeah,
a
but a club
Wookiee,
like
isn't
Manchester
it?
United should not be running out of pies at half
Shouldn't
time.
it? That is the biggest story of the week. Not the protest, not the fact that although they dominated the game, they nearly gave it away right at the very end. The fact is they ran out of pies, and this is why we want the Glazers out.
Yes, get him out.
We've got the title for the podcast. But no, listen, the performance was good. I was really impressed. I'm starting to fall in love with Sabitzer. I thought he was excellent. I loved his
terrific
energy
player,
at both ends of the pitch. I think it's a no-brainer that United try and make that signing permanent. And I'm going to doff my cap to Victor Lindelof as well. He's had a lot of criticism, mainly because he ended up playing alongside Harry Maguire more often than not. But actually, I think him and Shaw have shown in the last two games that that's quite a good little partnership there for
How
me.
good is Luke Shaw? He's been absolutely terrific. He covers others as well. He actually covered Lindelof a couple of times on Thursday night, and he did so again yesterday. He was brilliant. Casemiro was terrific in the game.
Bruno played well.
Rashford
made some good
Jadon
runs.
Sancho spoke up for himself and told Bruno to stop moaning, which was quite funny. There's a video clip doing the rounds now of Jadon Sancho just turning around to Bruno and going, "Stop moaning.
Yeah.
Stop moaning." Is brilliant. And actually, they should have had more goals.
Yeah.
But Aston Villa, talk to me about Aston Villa. Now, far be it from me to criticise Aston Villa because that gets me in all sorts of trouble. But why would you go to Manchester United and play such a high line, pushed up on the halfway line, when the best thing that Manchester United do is attack in behind? They just kept tossing the ball over the top, over the top, over the top. They were always going to get in. They did several times. In the end, when they scored the goal, it was on a quick turnover. But it was because they weren't set after playing so far up the pitch. Why?
Yeah, it's strange. I thought the goal was awful, actually. I thought there were so many mistakes in the goal. I think the goalkeeper didn't do well enough. I think they didn't respond quickly enough to the rebound. I thought it was a horrible goal to concede. I do give them credit.
He takes the shot early, doesn't he, Rashford? He takes it really early from inside the box. And you think, well, hold on, that's not a great shot, really.
No.
Why is Martinez not just dropped on the ball, really?
Yeah.
He pushes it straight out towards Fernandes. No one goes anywhere near him. And then there's a double deflection and it's in.
Yeah, it was a really, really strange goal. I was very surprised he didn't just gather that one up. But despite that, I thought they did push towards the end. They had a couple of scrambles, didn't they, in the penalty area? I think, obviously if they'd have grabbed an equaliser, I'm not sure that would have been entirely fair. I agree with you about Lindelof.
Can I just say on that scramble, that one right at the end where Ollie Watkins goes in behind. And then it just, it goes absolutely mad. No, that's from the corner that's come subsequently.
Yeah.
But just before that, there's one where it just goes mad and there's loads of stuff happening in the penalty area, pinball style. That's irrelevant. Ollie Watkins was offside. Konstantin Hatzidakis, because I was obviously at the game, I was doing the game for talkSPORT. So I was standing level with that line as the ball goes over the top. Watkins is offside. Hatzidakis, the assistant, isn't up with play. He's about 3 yards further back, so he doesn't flag, but he's clearly offside. So a whole passage of play happens, and on Match of the Day, it looks like there's a massive chance for Aston Villa. It's all irrelevant.
Because it would have been
straight
pulled
away
back
as soon
for
as
an
that
offside.
finishes, the flag goes up. So
Yeah.
all that's gone. That wasn't really a chance. And I think Manchester United knew it, which is why initially they were like, what's going on here? And play went on for far too long after that when it was clear that there was an offside in the build-up to it. Eventually it was given, and obviously everything changed as a result of that. But yeah, the one with Konza straight afterwards was a sort of odd situation where the ball was basically going in and he ends up turning it away. It was crazy.
Yeah, but Lindelof's been great. I thought he was fabulous against Forest because he had Harry Maguire having all kinds of psychodrama next to him, and he managed to hold the thing together. And I thought he played really, really well. And so I think that's something to build on. Sabitzer's an interesting one because I think with him, what we're seeing is a very intelligent, very well-rounded footballer because when he started, he was either a winger or an attacking midfielder. Julian Nagelsmann looked at him when he got to Leipzig and went, I think you can be a bit more than this. I think you can play deeper sometimes. I think you can put your foot in. He's embraced that. I know he looks a bit like a musketeer, but he does have that oomph about him.
Oh, we said pirate, didn't we, last night?
Yeah, Musketeer's
pirate,
a good one,
okay.
though.
Musketeer's better. No, I think Musketeer. I think you're right.
All for one and one for all.
Exactly.
He's
exactly.
definitely got that
the
about
Ten
him.
Hag way. The Ten Hag way. But I think there's no place for him at Bayern. Conrad Limer's coming in. They've got Goretzka.
Yes.
They've got Kimmich. There's no place for him at Bayern in the long term. They're
So how much,
insisting.
Kev? How much?
I don't think that much. I don't think that.
No.
I mean, I would.
We worked out about 18 million, something like that last night.
Around that. I would say around that. Maybe
if
even
you're
less.
Manchester United and you're trying to build a squad, that's the kind of player you want there, and that's good value.
He's pretty consistent as well. And he was captain at Leipzig. And I think there's an experienced guy there, played a fair bit of European football, understands the demands, knows he's not going to play every game. And as I say, you look at Bayern. Bayern are being insistent, weirdly, that Gravenberch is not for sale, that they see him as a player in the long term. How? You've got Goretzka and you've got Kimmich, you've got Lima
and he's hardly played this season, right?
Where is he going to play? So that's a curious one. But if he is going to stay, there's absolutely no place for Sabitzer in that squad.
So let me ask you a question. Are you tempted by the draw-on pencil moustache?
Not overly. You're obviously tempted by the ponytail. You're trying to go for that,
absolutely,
that kind of look.
Absolutely.
But yeah, because I think it looks like Scott McTominay will move on in the summer. I'm told Newcastle have a really big interest in him. Is Sabitzer an upgrade on McTominay? I like McTominay, but I think Sabitzer is probably a better player.
Let's look at the battle to remain in the Premier League. Bournemouth have all but secured a place in the top flight next season. It's not looking as good for Leeds.
22 goals conceded in 1 month alone. Javi Gracia and Leeds are staring at the Championship. Finished here, Bournemouth 4, Leeds 1.
The attitude of my players training every day, the ambition, the desire they have, and it's true we are not showing, I think, in the last games, but I believe that we'll be able in the next performances to do what we've done before, to compete very well and to get the results we need.
The group of players deserve massive credit because not many people gave them a chance.
Bournemouth 4, Leeds 1. Well, Bournemouth move on to 39 points, level with Chelsea, probably get more than Chelsea over the next couple of weeks. Crystal Palace have gone above them now, so Bournemouth will be the latest to go above them when the two meet on Saturday. Incredible job done by Gary O'Neill. Look, you've been down there a lot. You've worked there a lot. We know Gary very well from our time in Portsmouth. We know Richard Hughes, the sporting director there, very well. I think they've had two very good transfer windows. But Gary's done brilliantly with his in-game coaching, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to Joe Rothwell after their win at Southampton on Thursday, and I put it to him, should Gary O'Neill be a contender for manager of the season, which is a drum that I've been banging for a while. And he agreed. And I said, what's his best attribute? And he said, tactically. He sets us up. He gives us a game plan. And what he's very good at, and I've mentioned this before, is that he can read the way a game is going to go before he even kicks off. So the players know exactly what to expect from each individual opponent. Take the Southampton game, for example. He knew that Ruben Sellers is far from a coaching genius. So he knew the 6'7" striker wouldn't feature to try and exploit Bournemouth and their defensive frailties. He knew that Southampton would try and play through them, and he set up Bournemouth to counter that. They got the 1-0 win. Could have won by more. Clearly, he saw the Leeds deficiencies as well. But I just think he's such a calm head.
There's plenty of them.
Well, there is. But he's such a calm head, and he's just got the players really believing in him. And as you mentioned, I think supplemented, particularly by what they did in January. I'm a big fan of Dongo Watara. I know Kev is as well. I think he's going to be a real gem for Bournemouth. The goalkeeper Neto, who I didn't know too much about when they signed him in the summer.
He's very experienced.
Well, he's become the captain.
Yeah.
And he's a real leader. So, yeah, I think it's just about been the perfect project for Bournemouth, which is amazing considering that they started the season with one owner. They weren't necessarily convinced the takeover would go through in time for the window. It did. They started with Scott Parker slagging off his own players to come together and get that kind of unity. I think Gary O'Neill deserves a huge lot of praise.
And the great thing is that Bill Foley, when he takes over the football club, the guy who's in charge of the Las Vegas ice hockey team, he comes in, he buys the club, he turns around to everybody, he says, "Don't worry, we're not going to go down." And everyone goes, "Oh, don't say that. Don't say that." But he was right.
And do you know what he also...
He was right.
Do you know what he also said? And I met him before the takeover had actually been formally ratified. And I said, what are you going to do on the football side? And the top guys there, Richard Hughes and Neil Blake, the chief executive, were in the meeting. And he said, I'm not going to get involved in the football side. I don't know anything about football. I'm leaving it to these guys.
That's what you need.
I bet Chelsea fans wish Tom Bowley took the same approach, by the way.
Yeah, but it's about targeted signings, isn't it? Ouattara's a great example. He was a risk. I knew he was fun because I'd seen him play for Lorient, I'd seen him get goals, seen him get assists, but you never quite know if they're going to hit the ground
But he'd only
running.
just broken through, right?
Yeah, this was his breakout season at Lorient, and there's just no fear about him at all. Like, he steps into Premier League games straight away, he's affecting the game, trying to make things happen.
Yeah.
And when they play on the counter, as they often do, which is where West Ham did them the other day, by the way, because they just sat deep and went, go on then, see if you can counter. You can't. So, but he's brilliant. On the counter, he's absolutely brilliant. Gary O'Neill, who I've worked with, I like very much. I still don't think it's best practice in terms of giving the guy the keys to the whole thing. But it's worked, and I'm pleased for him. I'm pleased for them. But in general, when clubs do that, I'm not a massive fan of it. But I'm glad it's worked for him and them.
Yeah, I agree with that. On the flip side of that, in terms of people making wrong decisions, Leeds United, who make a lot of wrong decisions. I mean, we've had so many phone calls to the show yesterday, the Sunday session after the defeat. And, I mean, the Leeds fans are just at a loss. They don't know what to do. I mean, you saw the Twitter exchange with Andrea Radrizzani talking to some fan, basically saying that he's lost. I don't understand why Leeds fans are putting up with this, and then used a swear word. So he's at a loss. He's completely done. He says he's on the floor. He doesn't know what to do next. A lot of reports that Grazia could be sacked. Victor Orta and Angus Kinnear were in the dugout long after the full-time whistle, having serious conversations. But, I mean, would you trust Victor Orta to make another decision on a manager?
No.
I mean, you wouldn't, would you? I mean, first of all, how has Javi Grazia got the job? The last job that he had was in the Qatari Stars League, okay? Now, I know that he did all right with Watford, but come on. This is the Premier League, lads. You've got to have more of a plan in place. And they didn't have a plan in place when they sacked Jesse Marsch, because they didn't go looking for Javi Grazia, trust me. But talking to Leeds fans now, they would have just rather have gone down with Marcelo Bielsa in charge, because they would have had more fun, would have enjoyed watching the games, and actually thought they had a plan. And they may even had what's called a midfield, because Mark Rocker and Weston McKennie certainly aren't that.
No, they didn't have a midfield under Bielsa. So they're not against the top clubs anyway.
And do you know what? This is part of the problem that I've got with Leeds fans, and I've said it on air. I've been hammered for it. Let it go. You're it's like you've come out of a marriage and you're still in love with the ex-wife. Bielsa's gone. Bielsa would have taken them down last season. I'm convinced about that.
Right.
I don't understand why he's
but
still.
They'd probably rather that than this complete drama of like constantly changing managers and.
Well, they should have kept Jesse Marsch. They should have held their nerve. And kept Jesse Marsch.
They definitely should have done that, because they recruited for Jesse Marsch.
And then binned him 4 days after the window shut.
Exactly.
Ridiculous.
So why on earth would you do that, right? So don't recruit for the guy, change the guy before the transfer window and recruit for the new guy, or once you've recruited for him, at least keep him and give him the opportunity to work with the players that he asked for.
It's muddled thinking. The recruitment, as you say, has not been great. I actually spoke to another Premier League club who linked with Weston McKennie in the summer, and they said, we're not going to touch him. We don't think he's good enough. Maybe Leeds should have heeded that advice as well. But you look at Javi Grazia. I mean, you mentioned earlier about Stellini looking like he just come out of the morgue.
Well, I texted you after the interview you played out yesterday, didn't I? I said, what the hell is that?
It wouldn't give me any faith if I was a Leeds fan. He whispered his way through that interview.
As inspirational as a jellyfish.
Yeah, it's a mess. And you look at their run of fixtures.
But the interesting thing about Grazia was, if you look at his career, the whole thing is supposed to be he's a solid guy who sets up a team in a solid way. They've lost 5-1 to Palace. That should be instant relegation. They lost 6-1 to Liverpool. And they had this debacle. Poor old Meslier.
4-1 at Bournemouth.
Mellier's brain has gone. And I feel really sorry for him.
What do you do for him? What do you do with him, Kev?
You take
he's
him
a
out.
Good goalkeeper.
You take him out for a bit.
Young, talented player, but he needs protection.
The fella's been in a shooting gallery since the start of last season. And you cannot have a situation where a young guy who's mega talented, I do believe that. I think he's mega talented. But the way he now approaches things like crosses, is indicative of a goalkeeper that's totally lost his confidence. And again, this comes back to just a lack of clear thinking. And I think it starts at the top. You've got the San Francisco 49ers investment arm. They have their say. Orta has his say. Radritzani probably has his say. And you've got all these competing ideas, competing interests. The search for a manager after Marsh went was a joke. They were linked with Schroeder, which would have been an awful decision. The fans they got this.
He was in the stands.
Yeah,
wasn't
he
he,
was in the stands.
stage?
And then they went, oh, no, we're not interested in him. No, we're definitely not interested in him. What, he just rocked up at a Leeds game, did he? Just randomly. It's a joke. And I do feel sorry for the fans. They waited a long time to get back in the Premier League. And I think they're going to get dragged back down by just nonsensical thinking at the top.
I'd be surprised now, and I think it's really... And by the way, this is a team not in the relegation zone as we speak, right? I'd be really surprised. I'd be shocked if they don't go down.
If they stay up, it will be because other teams fall short. I'm not sure that Leeds are capable of saving themselves.
What you've got to remember is a few of them have got to play each other, right? Yeah. So Leicester play Everton tonight.
So they can't both lose, although they'll probably give it their best shot.
So people will put points on the board. I'm telling you, they are in a really difficult situation. In fact, they may be in more of a difficult situation than Nottingham Forest, bearing in mind the fixtures that are coming up. Leeds also breaking their own record for the most goals conceded in a calendar month. So congratulations for that. Newcastle 3, Southampton 1. I mean, we'll only touch on this very quickly because Southampton are just rubbish. They really are. And they're finished. They're down. They went 1-0 up and still lost 3. I mean, Newcastle didn't start playing till the second half, really. And they bought that. They did that thing where they bring on Isak to play, Wilson to play on with Isak, and it just changed the game completely. Yeah. I mean, they could have scored 3 or 4. They had another goal disallowed.
How great is it to see Wilson scoring goals and being fit, by the way? I love it. Any player that's really struggled with injury,
April, right?
I love players coming back after injury and just excelling. It's great because I'm always so sorry for them when they can't play and they've had really bad struggles with injury. It's great. Really great.
I also quite like the fact that he's a little bit, and you can see it when he's talking, a little bit narked that he's not starting every week. Because he's sort of like, I've got to come on and prove. And
good.
That's what Eddie Howe wants, right?
He's got that fire in his belly, Callum. Listen, I've tracked his career for a long time. When Bournemouth first signed him from Coventry, and he scored all those goals to get them in the Premier League, scored a lot of goals to keep them there. Obviously, people have questioned the injury record, but I think his goals per minute record for Newcastle must be right up there. I think he's a real talent, and he's just old school. He just sniffs out chances. He's a constant nuisance for defenders because he's always on the move, and he just knows where the back of the net is.
Yeah, we were rewinding and replaying his goals last night, and we were saying, he sniffs out the chances. He senses when there's going to be an opportunity, and he just gets in there at the right time. And that's a skill that not many have got, actually. And when you're looking desperately for a number 9 who can score goals, someone who gets 8 goals in a month, that's pretty damn impressive. Yeah. Brentford 2, Nottingham Forest 1. It's my birthday this week, right? Okay. I had a bit of a party, which is why Crook is here.
The party finished on Saturday. I'm still here on Monday.
He's still here. He won't go home. It was like that hotel room that we had last week in Wembley when he just turned up and then just decided to stay in the same room as me. He won't leave. So we had soccer Saturday on, right? Okay, and it was in the background, and I was like saying to one of the guys, "Look, just keep me abreast of the Nottingham Forest score. Nottingham Forest go ahead early. I'm getting excited. I told Crook they're definitely going to win this game. It's okay. Don't panic." They get to the 81st minute, and then what happens?
The same thing that happens every time they play away from home.
2 bad goals as well.
The thing is,
2 really bad
goals.
The
goals are so bad. Keylor Navas has had 2 absolute meltdowns, and you're like, come on.
Yeah, but the wall break. I agree with you about Navas, but the wall just breaks in front of him. Is it Kouyaté just wanders off somewhere to leave a massive gap in the wall? And it looks bad because he gets across and gets a hand to it. But I think the wall's to blame for the first one. And the second one's a mess. You shouldn't allow the shot. You should keep it out. It's a shambles. And they could talk about VAR and a player being in the eye line and all that all they want. It's a really bad goal to concede.
And also, they've been very unlucky with injuries. Nico Williams has now broken his jaw. Scott McKennie's not there. Chris Wood's not there.
When you've got 68 players, you can't blame injuries if you end up getting relegated, by the way.
Bianconi, Henderson, all out for the season. Omar Richards, all out for
They're down to the last 25, down to the bare bones.
They're down to the bare. They're not down to the bare bones. Southampton at home next week for them, though. They're going to win that one.
Well, you'd have thought so.
But Ruben Sellers has a nice coat, so who knows?
And a nice roll neck, yeah, and a nice coaching book. Yeah, I mean, they have to win that one. If they don't, they can start planning for a trip to Plymouth. But, I mean, you were trying to make a case for Forest staying up last night. You've been trying to make that case for a few weeks.
I've made the case.
And you think they're going to play teams at a good time, teams when they are on the beach, and they're going to start winning games.
Yeah.
I just don't know what evidence we've seen from Forest over the course
there's no
of the
evidence
season
for
to
it.
suggest that.
There's a pot of straws, and I'm clutching at them.
They've got to win the Southampton game. It's that simple, isn't it? They've got to win that
Leeds
game.
and Nottingham Forest both won't go, right? So it's going to be one of the two, and I'm going for Leeds. Because I think Leeds, Everton, and Southampton go. Kev, what's your three?
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting one. Leeds, definitely. Obviously, Southampton. Oh, I've backed Forest to stay up all season, so I've got to stick with them, haven't I? I'm very loath to go against Sean Dyche, to be honest, in any situation like that.
Don't give him as much stick about Nottingham Forest as you do me, but I did come up with a shout in September, to be fair.
Yeah, I think Kev's got more scientific reason. You just like the manager.
Tactically, I think they're very, very, very well drilled. He's
nice. As the points suggest.
Everton go down. There you go. Everton, Leeds, and but I think that's heart over head with Forest. But yeah, Everton, Leeds, and Southampton.
Who's your three?
Forest, Leeds, and Southampton.
Just on Southampton, really quickly, that's the flip side of the Gary O'Neill thing, right? The Gary O'Neill thing is when it works. When you go, here's an existing guy who we like, who's shown he's a good coach, let's give him the go. Sellers is just a guy who was there. It's just, and he's shown no real evidence that he should ever have had that job. And considering the guys at the top of Southampton are supposed to be data-led and really smart, wow, they need different data.
Well, there was a video doing the rounds on Twitter on Saturday night, which was from a very aggressive Southampton fan who was quite clear that the Southampton fans are not behind the current ownership right now. They said, in 1 year, you've managed to ruin our club. You had 3 different managers, and they've all been rubbish. Can I just say about Ruben Sellers? I think personality goes a long way. I think as a football manager, I really believe that, or any leader, personality goes a very long way. And we mentioned it about Graeme. You can be quiet and you can be calm, you can be composed, but you've got to have some sort of authority and personality to draw people in and to drag them with you. And I just don't think he's got that. I mean, I've spoken to him a few times. I think he looks a little bit like and maybe I'm wrong here, and I'm honestly just looking at the book cover without going into detail, but I think maybe he's a geek who's great on a laptop, brilliant at analysing games, really interested in football, and got himself a job doing that sort of thing and has worked his way through that way, and doesn't really have that sort of that connection with people that I think you need if you're going to be a manager. And
he hasn't been a head coach.
There, but that's the way it comes.
It's insane.
I know he's
been an analyst. He's been an assistant. If he'd gone away and worked at Rio Ave as like a manager, and he'd worked at, Leafering or whatever, and he'd done some managerial stuff, okay, you would just about understand that. But he was just a dude who was there. And that is really an insult to fans. Quite frankly, I think some of the decisions clubs are making...
It's the Premier League.
Yeah, it's an insult to fans. And I think Hasenhüttl, for all his faults, and he does have faults, we know that. He can be abrasive. He can lose the plot with players sometimes. We know all that. And that's stuff he's probably got to work on in the long term. But there's no way, if he was still the manager, they'd be in this position. No way.
No, I agree. They wouldn't be cut adrift. It was interesting. I had an epiphany when I woke up on Monday morning. I remember when they were relegated in 2005, Rupert Lowe, who wasn't a particularly popular owner, but he took quite an unprecedented step. He invited us in the media 24 hours after relegation. We were summoned to St Mary's, to the boardroom, and he basically sung for his supper. He tried to explain how Southampton had allowed themselves to be relegated and what they would do to repair it. Now, again, if Rasmus Ankersen has anything about him, because this is on him. He's the one who's made the key decisions. He's had 2 shocking transfer windows, which, as Kev said, when you're data-driven, doesn't say much for the data. He's made poor decisions in terms of recruiting managers. When the inevitable happens and Southampton go down, he needs to face the media. He needs to answer and tell these fans how he has managed in a year to undo all the good work from the past decade. 11 years Southampton have been in the Premier League. Nigel Adkins was there, actually, on Thursday night, trying to rabble-rouse the supporters. And I wonder what he's made of all this as the man who took Saints back into the Premier League. Pochettino, Koeman, even whispering Claude Puel built on that legacy. And that legacy has been destroyed in the space of a year by shambolic decision-makings from the top.
Talking of uninspiring characters, Claude Puel.
I'll tell you what, they give their right arm for Claude Puel now, Southampton fans.
Dear. Southampton, Nottingham Forest, what a massive game that is going to be next week. Okay, let's take a quick look at the rest of Saturday, starting with the game at the Amex Stadium. Brighton 6, Wolverhampton Wanderers 0. 5 changes to the starting 11 for Brighton, and it results in a 6-0 victory. The quality of the goals was incredible. Undav's chip, Gross's volley. We were like salivating over those goals, weren't we?
Amazing. I mean, Roberto De Zerbi called it the best performance of his whole career as a coach. And I think what it proves is that it's about the system of play, the style of play. Obviously, individuals are important. Obviously, if you don't have Matoma, that's important. Obviously, if you don't have, Ferguson, that's going to become increasingly important. He's a brilliant player. But the style of play and the system is set. And they look so cohesive, so at peace with what they're doing. Welbeck, I think, is a brilliant player. Undav has taken a while to get going. I wondered if he was up to this, to be honest. And that he played very, very well. He's got to keep doing that to prove he's a Premier League player.
Because he scored 26 goals in Belgium last year for Union Saint-Gilloise, but he hasn't really made an impact at Brighton yet. But Danny Welbeck, I thought his 2 goals were great as well.
Well, probably key timing for both of those players, because Brighton have got a deal wrapped up for João Pedro from Watford, club record £30 million. My understanding is that is done and dusted, and he'll be a Brighton player as soon as the transfer window opens. So you've got Ferguson, you've got João Pedro now, you've got Welbeck, so Undav probably is 4th choice. So
and
Ciso as well. So he needed to step up to the party. But what Brighton are doing is they're trying to get their business done early. I know they're really keen on young Alex Scott at Bristol City as well. And I think James Milner from Liverpool to Brighton is going to happen. Adam Lallana clearly has played a role in that, but De Zerbi wants that experience, wants that type of character in the dressing room. I think from a Brighton perspective, the fact that De Zerbi has handpicked João Pedro, the fact he wants James Milner, I think that could give Brighton fans confidence that despite the fact bigger clubs are looking at their manager, he will be there at least until the end of next season.
Well, hold on. I think it's worth pointing out as well, you talked about the volume of players, especially in the forward battalion. We talked just moments ago about the fact that people need goal getters. They're going to be playing European football in all likelihood next year. So they're going to need to rotate a lot more, and they're going to have to build a bigger squad, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for them to compete on 2 fronts. They've got Manchester United at home on Thursday. That's a big game for them in terms of their quest for Europe. It's live on talkSPORT. Will they be trying to seek revenge for the FA Cup defeat on penalties, Kev?
Yeah, there'll be an element of that, but I think also there'll be a confidence that they were probably the better team in that semi-final, and so I think they'll take a lot of heart from that. And just on that João Pedro signing, I've seen him a few times live for Watford. Every time he's been the best player on the pitch by such a distance. Like, not just in the Watford side, but the opposition as well. Sometimes you see a player and think, oh, he's way above this level that he's playing at. And I think he'll be brilliant for them. But yeah, this is an enormous game. And I think, as I say, that confidence in the system, the confidence in the way they play, the fact that they've got lots of players fit and firing at the same time, I think is huge for them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win the game.
Yeah, interesting to see what happened to Wolves, though, because it was almost a little bit like, and whisper it quietly, the Marco Silva, they were on the beach thing. They got themselves into a position where they know they're probably safe now, and then went to Brighton, the beach, and literally got whacked. I mean, they didn't turn up in the match, did they? They were just a little bit off colour, and you could see Julian Lopetegui was like, "Oh my God, what is happening here?" And he's not a man to suffer fools.
No,
it's a big summer for Wolves because Martinho is coming to the end. Adama Traore is out of contract. I think they expect Ruben Neves to be sold. Raul Jimenez probably will leave the football club, bit of a fan's favourite. So I think he's got a lot of work to do, Lopetegui, this summer. And maybe that 6-0 defeat will just focus some minds in the boardroom that despite the fact, because they made a really good managerial appointment, they're staying up. They're still far from the finished article.
But that's okay, I think, because I think it gives him the opportunity to reshape the squad in his own image, really. It gives him an opportunity to sort of, make Wolves his own. I think that he'll do that in the summer. Palace 4, West Ham 3, another mental game. And Crystal Palace, who didn't score a goal for about 7 years, have now scored about 10 years worth in the games that Roy Hodgson has been in charge of. What will they do without him next season, Kev?
Well, I mean, it's so bizarre because I think we were positive about the appointment in terms of Palace staying up, but we questioned the long-term strategy, and I still do.
Yes.
But I think we were all of the mind that this is going to work, that it'll do enough to keep them up. What we didn't expect...
We all just went, they'll be safe now.
Yeah, exactly. What we didn't expect was 1970s Brazil to turn up. For the next few weeks.
We certainly didn't.
Really,
no.
I mean, the way Eze's played is amazing. And that just shows, if you've got a manager that 100% believes in you, sticks his arm around you, puts you in positions where you can affect the game, that can make a massive difference. And the irony is, this was supposed to be where Patrick Vieira's Palace were at this point in his second season. But what happened was he got stuck and he thought, we're giving away a few too many goals here. I'm going to rein it back. I'm going to put the restrictions on. And they got stuck. And so it needed Roy Hodgson, one of the great attacking coaches of our time, to come in and release them. I did think West Ham were terrible. I was
going to say, there was a little bit of West Ham.
Yeah,
there was a little bit of
dreadful.
West Ham being really bad in this. And I think especially a couple of the goals defensively. I mean, the gift was ludicrous, wasn't it?
But they were so good against Bournemouth. So weird. It's like they were amazing against Bournemouth.
That's where West Ham are. They play well for one game and then really bad for another.
Yeah.
They're about, they're very inconsistent.
Yeah, and it probably proves the point that the best thing they can do at the end of the season is thank David Moyes, maybe with the European trophy, and then move on to a new manager and go in a different direction. They're going to be okay, West Ham, in terms of the Premier League, but it's been a disappointing season domestically for them.
Kev, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoyed your company as always. Crookie, thank you very much for sitting over. Will you please go home now?
I was going to say, can I leave now?
Can you leave now? Crikey, I've been trying to get rid of him for 10 days. We'll see you later on in the week when we'll review all the week's action and look forward to a pivotal weekend in the Premier League, because things may be sorted by the time we get together on Friday. I did think this when we started last week's sort of mental week and a half of football. By the time we get to Thursday, Friday morning, we'll have a lot clearer picture as to who's going to win the title, who's going to finish in the top 4, and who's going down.